All right, let's dive in. Have you ever really wondered how the Australian economy actually works? We're about to follow the money, tracing its path right from the very beginning all the way through the system to see who's pulling the levers that affect every single one of us.
It's a question that's probably crossed your mind, right? I mean, we see money in our bank accounts, we use it every day, but what's the real story? Where does it actually come from before it lands in your wallet? To make sense of it all, we're going to use a pretty simple metaphor. Think of the economy as a giant circulatory system, and money is the lifeblood flowing through it. And to really understand it, you've got to start right at the source, the heart.
So, our journey kicks off at the very center of it all, what we're calling the economy's heartbeat. And this is where the money supply is controlled by two massive players, the Reserve Bank of Australia and, of course, the federal government.
So, the RBA. This is basically the heart of our financial system. Its main gig is managing monetary policy, which, is really just a fancy way of saying it decides how much money gets pumped into the economy to keep things running smoothly.
So how do they actually do this? Well, they've got two main levers they can pull. The first one is the cash rate. This little number influences everything, from the interest you pay on your mortgage to what you earn on your savings. The second lever is something called quantitative easing, or QE. You can think of this as a more direct injection of cash straight into the banking system to get them to lend more money out.
But the RBA isn't acting alone. Of course, we've got the government. It's kind of like a second pump in the system. When it spends on huge projects, think roads or hospitals, it's pushing cash right into the hands of businesses and people. And when it collects taxes, well, it's doing the exact opposite. It's pulling that money back out of circulation.
Okay, so the money has left the heart, the RBA and the government. Where does it go next? Well, it flows to what you could call the financial arteries of the economy, our banks and our lenders.
Putting it simply, banks are the great connectors. Their whole job, really, is to act as these conduits, taking money from people who are saving it and channeling it over to people who need to borrow it.
And here's how that actually works day to day. That money you put into your savings account, it doesn't just sit there in a vault. The bank uses it to fund someone else's home loan or maybe a new business startup. And at the same time, you've got these massive players, like our super funds channeling trillions of dollars into the stock market and property, which just fuels even more economic activity.
Okay, so the money's been created and it's traveled through the arteries. Now we get to the really important part, where it actually does its work and has a real, tangible impact on our lives. We're talking about everyday people and businesses.
I mean, just look at this. That massive 60% slice right there, that's household spending. That's you and me buying groceries, filling up the car with petrol, paying our rent. Our collective daily spending is without a doubt the single biggest engine of the entire Australian economy. It's what keeps the whole machine humming along. And on the other side of that coin, you've got the businesses. They take the money we spend and use it to pay wages, which sends it right back to households like ours. Plus, they invest in new projects and, this is crucial, they connect Australia to the rest of the world through trade.
And that brings us to our next stop. See, the Australian economy doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's constantly interacting with the rest of the world, creating this powerful global feedback loop that ends up influencing everything right here back at home.
It all boils down to a really simple concept. When investors from overseas think Australia is a great place to park their money, whether it's in our property market, our companies, or our natural resources, they first have to get their hands on some Australian dollars.
So what happens then? Well, all this high demand for our currency pushes its value up, and that creates a bit of a trade-off. For us, a strong Aussie dollar is great when we're buying imported stuff like new phones or cars. They get cheaper. But for other countries, it makes our exports like iron ore or wine more expensive, and that can really hurt those industries.
So, we've looked at all the individual pieces of the puzzle. Now let's actually put it all together. We'll run through a quick example to see how just one decision can send these massive ripples through the entire system we've just mapped out.
Okay, imagine this. The RBA cuts the cash rate. Step 1, all of a sudden, borrowing money gets cheaper. Step 2, the banks react by lending out more money for things like mortgages. Step 3, households start taking on these cheaper loans and they spend, which causes house prices and retail sales to go up. Step 4, foreign investors see this strong growth and they start buying up Aussie dollars to invest here. And finally, Step 5, all that demand strengthens our currency, which then makes our exports more expensive for the rest of the world. See that? One single decision creates a 5-step chain reaction.
So, after this whole journey, what are the big takeaways? First, money has a really clear flow. It starts with the RBA and the government, moves through the banks, and ends up with people and businesses. Second, the whole system is steered by three main levers: interest rates, government spending, and foreign investment. And finally, never underestimate the power of the Aussie dollar. Its value creates these huge knock-on effects for all of us.
And that really brings us to the final question for you. Now that you can see the machinery of the economy, now that you can see the levers that control it, from interest rates to the value of our dollar, which one of those do you think has the biggest impact on your own financial life? It's definitely something worth thinking about.